we didn't value our educators in that way, so we didn't do it. So there are three things that I see at the root of the question that you're asking. One, for those who are saying open schools in which students attend classes and teachers teach in classrooms.
Right.
And then two, the next thing is if you're not opening schools and you're only doing virtual school, web-based learning, what should have been in place and what should be in place. So to address the first one, I think I started this by saying safety is first.
Yes. Yes.
One of the things that teachers do well is love and honor the children.
Yes.
And you're almost stressing a teacher out when you're asking a teacher not only to jeopardize themselves, but they're concerned about the child.
Yes.
So I would say that those who are not asking teachers what they should do and are making decisions need to be open-minded and fully informed about what the situation is in terms of this virus and what may be needed to even create a healthy enough space in which students can learn and not get sick and teachers cannot get sick. So I would, and just about every time you interview teachers, they're all just almost all saying, let's hold on the in-classroom learning and let's look at how we can learn virtually and do a better job at that.
Right.
So the teachers are not being asked, right? Because I don't know why, but the teachers are not being asked. But if they're asked, most of them are saying that because we cannot guarantee the health of teachers or students by having them go back now while we're still learning about this virus. Each day we learn something new. And we see that higher education, many of the universities have already decided they're not having on-campus fall classes. So if they could do that at the university level, certainly in the K-12, we can do the same.
Yes.
And then that would give us an opportunity to have all of the fall and part of the winter to plan for if, in fact, we can be open in the spring. Then you can do a really, really good job. But doing things at the last minute where you open schools and then students and teachers get sick and you close schools again, it's not necessary to do that with proper planning and also listening to the teachers and having a sense of what is the best thing to do in terms of safety given the knowledge that we have.
Sure.
So for my opinion, I would say that this should be a time where schools are opening up virtually and we are perfecting that virtual learning and planning how to make the spaces safe should we open in the spring.
Right.
That is what I think would be the intelligent thing to do. It's not emotional. It's not political. It's very factual and caring. And our children really need to see in a time of crisis like this true caring on the part of those who are responsible for their well-being.
Absolutely. So, I have to bring this up, Dr. Lynch, because, I'm a child psychiatrist as well. And what I get hit with is, and what we've heard from the media as well, children have to be in school. They have to be in the classroom. Children learn socially. They have to have that social input, et cetera, et cetera. And, from my standpoint, yes, they absolutely do need that. Even homeschooling programs often have a socializing component to them. There's no doubt that children need that. It becomes, yes, how much do they need it in comparison to how much they need to be safe from becoming ill, making their teacher ill, or making a family member ill. And so I completely agree with you because I have been saying from the beginning of this, we need to buy some time. So no one is saying that children don't need to be socialized. That is not a reason to open the schoolhouse in the middle of a pandemic. My teenage students all want to see their friends. I mean, it's an important part of their lives, but we have a situation. And I'd like to hear from you about that. The second thing I'd like to hear about, because it's the other thing that we hear, is that that, and it's real, is that, people have to get back to work. And so, and certainly in rural areas and in the inner city where parents have to leave out and their children are young and they don't have child care in a pandemic, how do their children learn from home? And go on.
Well, I was just saying how we've constructed society cannot be resolved on the backs of the students, on the backs of our children, unfortunately, and their parents. So for some reason, not for some reason, we know the reasons why we've made school be a major babysitting
That's right.
Option, and we may be rethinking that. However, one of the things that have to be taught, that if you take time and thoughtfully create some learning modules for our children based on the question that you're asking about socializing, is helping our children be adaptive, resilient, self-motivated, and have internal leadership skills. There are things that you can do even virtually to have the students begin to notice and develop those skills themselves. Right. And throughout the history of man, sometimes when people are talking, I wonder if they are connected to history.
Yeah.
Please go back and take a look at the history of man. While we have always been a social being, there are times when there was less of us than more.
Right.
In addition to that, students have created an entire world of socialization virtually. I have parents of students that I tutor who say, "Oh, let's make a schedule. They can't do Monday at this time because that's when they're having a virtual play date."
Exactly.
So there is so much that we can do, but I don't see position papers or information papers going out making suggestions and recommendations on building these soft skills in our students and in ourselves, and also on helping parents know what other ways can my child socialize so that part of themselves continues to be developed. One of the things that we notice about children is that they're very adaptive and very resilient.
Very resilient.
How well we organize and plan the world in which they have to exist determines how successful that they will be.
That's right.
So we're not having a planful conversation. I do want to say this. It was a couple of months ago, the Emerson Collective, they have a web show called The Way Forward. And they had Wendy Kopp, who is the founder of Teach for America and now Teach for All, that's worldwide. And she arrived at the same conclusion that I have been sharing here, that relationships with the teachers is the most important thing.
Yes.
And that in schools in which these relationships were strong, transitioning to virtual learning moved much better.
Sure.
In fact, she said the shift that happened, seeing clearly that teaching is a relational business and not a transactional one. Most of what we're hearing in the news are about transactions. That's why we say parents have to go to work. No, it's a relational. So the students who are connected, and that happened in my interviews with the teachers, the students who are connected to their teacher, with their teacher, to their school, are eager to interact with them online, to follow up on the lessons that they're given. And those teachers are eager to give feedback. In fact, all of them. I interviewed about almost 10 teachers, and they talked about feedback, something that they'd always wanted to provide for their students, but could not do it on the level that they're doing it now, and how much that means to the children to provide feedback. So it's about fostering that relationship that's going to allow the child to learn. And also all of the studies of how the brain learns, one of the big things that they noticed was that especially with adolescents, they actually learn more from people they were related to, in relationship with, than not. So that's really important. So I think that how strong relationships are with schools is how students are going to move forward, and how not so much with schools, but their teachers, with that teacher that's going to come on that web. So that means to me that we should be paying attention to the level of skills that the teacher has. That teacher actually can deliver a lesson. That teacher. The other thing that teacher said, in some of the some of the plans that districts have made, the teachers have a day where they meet for a couple of hours with other colleagues, either on grade or subject. And they say that that's the most important piece, other than the time they spend with the children. When they're working together with other colleagues, they're developing lessons, they're troubleshooting issues that have come up. And so, again, we do know what to do. We do know how to create opportunities for teachers to learn from each other and for teachers to be able to have the knowledge that they need to deliver virtual learning to the students well.
Before I go to
another...
I'm sorry, go on.
You did mention... No, just one thing. You did mention all of that being said, the reality is that all of our children and families are not capacitated on the same level.
Right.
In terms of Wi-Fi and all of that.
That's right.
So that is an issue that we have to face. What I have seen in the districts here that they have provided, and the ones that have started the school year, and I was with the school yesterday, all of this week actually, they provided the laptop and they provided a hotspot.
That's so important.
And one of the things that I heard the Department of Ed saying is that you can't have one hotspot in the house because it's not enough. So each child that you give a computer to or a laptop to, that child must have a hotspot.
Yeah.
And so whether schools can do that and whether districts have enough of that, so that's one of the issues. The other issues in places where they just don't have that. In rural America, are the learning packets completed? And we know that's a hard sell, and it's a hard way for us to say students are learning when they're actually, going to worksheets. So again, in that case, what works is when in fact there's feedback. So let's say in Mississippi, the students are getting these learning packets simply because in a rural district they do not have the Wi-Fi.
Yes.
Okay, well, who is actually looking at those? Because one of the things that happened in some of the schools here on the West Coast where they had to resort to giving some students hard packets to work on because they didn't have the Wi-Fi and they couldn't get all the Wi-Fi to them.
Yes.
Those students, their parents would drop off the work once a week. But when I looked in further as to was someone looking at this work and providing feedback, that was not happening.
Yeah.
So I think if I were in a district that was rural and did not have the Wi-Fi capacity and they were doing hard copy, is to make it doable so that the students actually can do something that the teacher can respond to, that when the student comes to pick up the next week's work, they actually can hear the voice of the teacher in the feedback that they have received for the work from the previous
and maybe
week.
with a phone call. Maybe it's...
Yes, how beautiful is that?
Right? With just a meeting with parent online and the student and the teacher, or even just the student and the teacher, because that's where that's at. I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to interrupt you earlier. I was thinking of something as I was listening to you, and I want to know what you think about it. This is an idea of mine, and I want to know, would it work? Or should it work? What if we had, we're in now, this all needed to be planned out earlier, but what if we had students continue with the same teacher they had the year before?
Now yes, those were the plans.
Do you know what I'm saying? So that relationship
was to consider that. Yes,
yeah. So that relationship.
Yeah. Go ahead, yes, ma'am.
So that relationship could continue. Understanding that certainly if you're moving to the next level where your teacher doesn't teach that particular subject, and I understand that there's some issues there, but just so that the relationship could continue, so that students are not, sort of meeting a new teacher virtually. Not that can't happen, and not that can't be successful, but again, that would have had to be planned, right, and implemented, and we just didn't have that. So anyway, that's what so you are in agreement with that. I wanted to know.
Yes.
Okay.
This is what I'm saying. The planning. There's also something called flip lessons, Dr. Ifill, that where you actually can do a quick mini lesson. You can also read a story, and then you can send that to the student before your virtual class with the students, so the student has already studied something, completed something, created some questions, listened to a story. But you have to take time to give the teachers the time